I recently sat down with Alexandra Rose and Dr. Malini Iyer talking about Saturn's ingress into Capricorn. We had a great discussion about all kinds of stuff, so check it out. Okay, so I'm recording and I'm here with Dr. Malini Iyer and Alexandra Rose, two of my great students and great astrologers in their own right. And we're going to talk about Saturn and his ingress and occupation of Capricorn for the next about 3 years. Are you ladies ready for this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ready for Saturn's transit and ready to talk about it? Alex, we'll start with you. What do you think? What have you been seeing?
Well, the past week or two, it's been, I would say really the past week, there's been so much kind of, for me personally, internal shaking going on. And I think that a lot of other people have been experiencing it. It's like we're on the impetus of something shifting, but there's a lot of kind of stuff that's getting drudged up in the process. And what I think partially what it is right now in this transit is the Sandhi of Saturn moving, which just means that he's moving out of one sign into another, but hasn't really settled himself into it, into Capricorn at this point.
Yeah.
And so it seems like, as the bringer of karma and kind of as this heavy force, there are some things getting brought up which appear to me to be almost omens or indicators of things that we're going to be working with as we progress through this Saturn and Capricorn transit.
Let me bring up the chart here too. Sorry. Yeah, there's the chart. Sorry about that. I should have brought this up.
All good. And I think it depends, of course, too, on what house it is for the person. So like for me as a Cancer, I'm starting to have these really deep relationship issues coming up internally, as Capricorn is kind of that feminine internal sign. And I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to be bringing with me. It seems like,
Oh, the Cancers. Ooh.
It's going to be great, guys. But it's really, I can feel it happening. And one of those sort of lessons with Saturn. So before I move into that, this Sandhi, like I said, it just happens as Saturn gets past 1 to 2 degrees of Capricorn. It'll slowly start to calm itself. But this really is a ripe time to be becoming aware of the certain issues that we'll be working with personally and collectively as Saturn moves into Capricorn.
Yeah. Malini, how are you feeling that?
For me, it feels a re-evaluation of life itself. So I've been really tuned into Saturn since it moved into Libra. Since it moved from Virgo to Libra, Scorpio to Sagittarius, and now in Capricorn. And while Saturn was in Libra, things felt easier to accomplish. There were goals that were there, and was very easy for me, the world as a whole, to work on social issues, especially. Mm-hmm. We had President Obama in office, and we had all kinds of stuff going on where people were aware. And then when Saturn moved into Scorpio, that's when things, the dark side, the underbelly of the world started coming up.
Yeah.
And the thing with Saturn is, I call it the cold judge. It doesn't let us live a passive life. Wherever Saturn is placed in your chart, whatever house it falls in, and whatever house it's transiting over, whatever houses it's aspecting, all those houses come into focus. And Saturn, I equate Saturn to my critical mother, but it's that criticism that it brings in the internal focus where we are not meeting our standards. Yeah. And then when Saturn moved into Sagittarius, there was this whole effort put into trying to work some system while everything else was falling apart. And as Saturn is moving into Capricorn, it's become very emotional because personally, I've become very aware of things that I have been doing that have not worked for me, where I see myself. And it's true for everybody else in the world too. We can see it where everybody sees where they're supposed to be and they're not matching that. And what do we need to do to get there? So as Saturn is transiting from Sagittarius to Capricorn, all these ideologies that we had for ourselves and for the world and, you know, this utopic living, where are we falling short of? And taking inventory of that, and then also coming up with plans and ideas that are very practical, tangible, step by step movement, so that we can make progress towards where we want to go. We all have certain standards. We all have a certain way that we want to be in the world. We want the world to be a certain way. And instead of just having these crazy ideas that we want to just take off with, what are the practical step-by-step everyday rituals, everyday activities that we can do that make these small, infinitely small changes, but they are infinitely significant.
Yeah, and one of the things about the transition too is that it happened right on the new moon.
Yes, it happened on the new moon. For me,
So
that is the new year.
Yeah, no, it's also the new year, and it's the this would be the last new moon would have been the first day of the year in the Vedic times, which is the new moon in the month of Magha. But it's no, but that's why it's also been a pretty feeling a lot of energy shifting, because it was happening. It literally happened right as we were having the new moon. If you look at the chart I have up here, you see Saturn. Like if you go back, this is the new moon. Look at the new moon. 9 degrees of the moon, the sun, 10 degrees in Saturn. It literally 4 hours earlier. This is Lahiri Ayanamsha, of course.
Yeah.
But it was like right as that was happening.
Yes.
So
yeah.
And Alix, what were you saying? You know, you were this. I think of you in this regard too, because you know you've mentioned you have Cancer ascendant, and it's you know, a difference. You know, the functional nature of the planet is so important, because Malini's got the Libra ascendant, where Saturn is a functional. It's a friend. That's its functional nature. I have Gemini, where it's also functional nature, but with Cancer, it's not. It's not an easy. It's a harder. Functional status of the planets are so important.
Yeah, I definitely, you know, one of the things, if we're talking about sort of Cancer in general, I think it's a lot to do with, of course, what Saturn brings up and how kind of it feels like energy that is desired, and also that really that safety, that security, that kind of steadfastness that Saturn brings, and yet in the process it brings up so much transformation and discomfort because of the things that have to get dealt with, and because of the emotional reaction that can come with that process.
How do you see that transformation shown in its functional nature? Like what? Like by the house rulerships.
Well, so if we're talking about Cancer, specifically,
Cancer.
And well, it's the 7th and 8th house.
And
ruler.
8th Lord.
Right.
That's what I was getting at. See, you guys are so smart. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. That's how you can see, because this is how you really have to evaluate all the transits, is by, and that's what the functional nature of it is, because for Cancer, it rules the 7th and the 8th.
Right.
And Alix said all the desires and the transformation that comes. That's why I'm saying, 7th house is the desires, 8th house is the transformation, and how, and it's Saturn. So it's not like, oh, this will be a fun transformation. It's like, it's a, how do you experience that as a Cancer? Like how would you say that would be, how that comes out, those things?
Well, I think that with the Cancerian nature, it's there is a desire to want to merge and to want to have like, you know, the no boundaries. Like I'm always working with my boundaries.
Right.
And a desire to love unconditionally. Like you can do anything to me. I love you anyway. And then Saturn, you know, kind of saying, well, no, there has to be boundaries. There has to be trust.
Let's see how that do anything to me thing works out.
Yeah.
Saturn says, yeah, let's give that a shot.
And that's where and that's why it becomes, but because of the Cancer nature of continuing to try and do the thing, like a Cancer, it creates more trust issues. It creates more breaks and changes and transformations because of this process. And I think that's where actually I'm excited and happy that Saturn is moving into my 7th house, because I feel that he's going to help me.
Yeah.
I can already feel him helping me, you know, with this kind of contrast of energy that I'm needing.
Yeah, and that's the thing I was saying. That's the, you know, the dignity of the planet by transit, whether it's a functional benefic or a malefic, when it's in its own sign, it's bringing the goods.
Right.
So this is why, honestly, everybody should be really happy. It's not just that Saturn's going through Capricorn, but then it goes through Aquarius. So Saturn's going to be in its own signs for like 5.5 years. And I mean, that's like, you know, Saturn is some of the biggest energy we have to deal with. We have to master our fear of death and our control issues and this illusion that we have something under control, and we don't. And that all comes from Saturn, all that fear. And so he's usually somewhere else, like tweaking something somewhere else and in another sign where it's not his native sign. Just like when you go off somewhere and you take a journey, some places that you journey, you feel comfortable there, you know, like a friend's house, but you're still not home. You're home, and that's where you're really operating at your peak. So having him there is going to be good for everybody, regardless of whether he's a functional benefic or a malefic. So, and for you, Malini, you're Libra, right?
I'm a Libra rising.
And so how do you see the functional, friendly nature of Saturn?
So for Libra rising, Saturn is the 4th and the 5th house ruler. So 4th house is the house of heart. It's moksha. It's one of those angle houses, and then 5th house is the house of karma. And for Libra, Libra are people pleasers. They want to connect and engage, and there's a lot of desire with people, which also brings in a lot of hurt, and then wanting to protect the heart and not stay open. But you know, and they struggle with that constantly. And with Saturn moving into Capricorn, I'm actually stoked about this position, because it gives you a kind of practical nature wherein you're like, so what if I get hurt? I'm still going to try and connect. So what if somebody else disappoints me? I'm still going to move forward with what I'm supposed to do. So it gives the endurance to go over, to deal with things that are unpleasant, especially in terms of matters of home, heart, mother, anything that like really, instead of trying to just protect the heart, stay open even though it's difficult. And the 5th house comes from the 4th house, is because you want to create something that's your heart's truest desire. So instead of getting bogged down by all the obstacles you face, keep moving forward even though it hurts. Have the endurance even though it hurts. Just keep moving forward. And also gaining clarity over what you want to create in the world and what you want to do. And like, you know, I'm a Libra, I'm all over the place. I have like 500 million thousand interests. And then what am I willing to commit to? I'm going through this phase where I'm thinking about what's my legacy? What is my life's work on this planet? What do I want to create? And what am I willing to endure in order to create that?
Yeah. So again, this is kind of a common theme, I think, for everyone with that Saturn going through Capricorn. makes us aware of the truth of Saturn, which is that we only have so much time, and we're usually wasting quite a bit of it. And so we want to get serious. And so I know both of you are doing quite a bit of readings these days, and whatnot. Are you seeing these themes show up in your readings? Alix, you seeing some of these things as Saturn has been moving, seeing some things shifting with people?
Well, I suppose I have actually. You know, a lot of people have been coming. I didn't really think about this until you asked me. But a lot of people have been coming wanting to know how they can really embody their sort of gifts this year, how they can step into things more this year.
Just real quick, because Saturn has been at that last degree or so for, you know, Saturn can hang out at that last degree and the first degree of the next sign for a couple months. It's like, you know, so this is why he's, you know, Saturn is Sunday for, you know, literally like a month and a half or two. So.
Right. Yeah, and you know, that's sort of what I've been noticing too with Saturn moving, is sort of that Capricorn has this, I mean, Sagittarius has this urge to kind of want to be inspired, right? And realize inspiration, kind of have that higher quality. And now as Saturn is moving into Capricorn, it's like, okay, now it's almost like that Sandhi creates that bridge where it's like there's the movement from the inspiration into like, okay, how do I actually do the thing now, and step into my purpose, and
give it a form.
Give it a form, exactly. That kind of tamasic, tangible steadiness. And you know, that's where I've been talking with people about this, is that like, okay, here are some tangible ways, that let's come up with some tangible ways that you can move towards this purpose or this vision. But also because it's Capricorn and it's ruled by Saturn, I've also been discussing with people the idea that purpose is such a lofty thing. Your purpose can simply be, especially as Saturn is moving into Capricorn, to just begin to unravel, you know, begin to really get to the very basic of what, you know, what if the structure needs work, or if the basic kind of way that you've been dealing with things needs to be redeveloped, redefined on an internal level, then let's let that be the purpose first before getting too lost in things, because Saturn and Capricorn really wants a steady foundation to work with, and slow, you know, Saturn in general is slow. And so, yeah, I've been really working with people on that kind of Saturn-esque, like kind of bringing it down a little bit to like, okay, I know you want this big thing, but like, let's get kind of our, you know, our ducks in a row here, so to speak.
Yeah, that implementation. And again, that's it. And it's the part of us that wants to do that. So we can see it's like Saturn that wants it. It's actually obviously a part of our mind that wants it. Saturn's the part of us that wants that structure. Even just like when you were mentioning, I was going to say earlier, like you as a Cancer, you know, or, you know, the water loves to flow, but even the water has a shore on each side that contains it. There's a boundary in the water. And so Saturn, you know, that earth that contains the river or the ocean, you know, the banks is what makes it an ocean and not just an endless flood. And so that's what gives it a structure and a boundary. But yeah, just like in our life, we want things to, we want it to produce a result. People all the time, you know, and we get all the inspiration there in Sagittarius. It's good to feel all of that sort of elation, but then it's so ungrounded, you know, so that's why Saturn has been there. And it's like Malini said at the beginning, it's like, you know, we want some kind of structure, but instead we're kind of trying to find, we're just getting kind of triggered and sort of projections going everywhere and like nothing tangible, and trying to find something tangible and something to concentrate on that's so abstract.
Right.
And how about you, Malini? Have you been noticing with your readings? I know you were doing quite a few readings there for a while, and
yeah. So I have been, fortunately, I have had a lot of people who are later in life. They are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s come up to me for readings. it's very interesting to see see the evolution of Saturn in them. Many of them were mothers who have raised children, and they are like, now what? And there are people who have chased money for all this time, and they are now like, now what? This doesn't, really, what's the purpose of life? But it's what's the purpose of life after they've lived it, chasing something that has really not served their soul. And it's tricky, right? Because we live our life in a very third house way, wherein we are just chasing our interests. And I'm seeing this come up over and over again in readings where people have chased real estate, money, stock markets, or just chase their children all over, and just women have lived their lives being a mother and a housewife, and now what? And then being able to reconnect them into something higher but also tangible has been even a challenge for me. It's a growing up learning curve where you're telling people with Saturn, the biggest thing that I see is serving others. So how do you serve others?
Mm-hmm.
How do you serve the world? How do you find yourself while being in servitude to others? Helping the underprivileged, and that's come up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people have lived a full life, have in their own ways found they find a little bliss when they work in hospice, they volunteer in hospice. So like dealing with death, themes of death have been very big.
Yeah.
And then that makes them question the way they have lived their life. So that's pretty big. And when as Saturn was going through Sagittarius and has moved into Capricorn, what can they do on a daily basis to
Mm-hmm.
connect to themselves, and then also feel like their life has a bigger purpose?
Yeah. And, there's a couple other things too mentioned, is that, of course, the planet is where it's going through the sky.
Mm-hmm.
It's in that sign, but then it's also throwing those aspects.
Yes.
So Saturn is also aspecting any planets in Pisces,
Mm-hmm.
Libra, and Cancer.
Yes.
So he's, throwing those aspects as well. People should always remember, because Saturn aspects 3 houses in front, the 7th house, and then also the 10th house. So that any planets in those signs also are going to start feeling that. And it's not insignificant. I mean, it's not insignificant at all. It's almost like it's a real aspect. And, if you have any really strong aspects in your natal chart from Saturn, you'll know it's a real thing. I personally happen to have 2. I have one on my moon and one on Jupiter. I have Jupiter in Pisces and the moon in Libra, and it's like almost exact aspect. And it's almost like having them joined. I mean, it's like those exact aspects from Saturn are really, they really put the pressure on you. Like, this is what Saturn does, is he exerts pressure. And it's that pressure of time, that fear of wasting your time, but also, that limitation that just pulls everything down and just says, like I have, for example, one of them is Jupiter in Pisces, where people are like, oh, Jupiter in Pisces, it's like, yes, it's very, very elevated there. And, but then Saturn kind of spoils the fun. He's like, yeah, but it's not God on, but you're not, not just I'm not God, but no, it's, God isn't here on earth. It's, even though I can feel that inspiration, that purpose, Jupiter in Pisces, that merging, that metaphysical thing, Saturn is like, he's going, not here on earth though, buddy. No, not on earth. No. It's like, it's like, you know, he spoils the party, man. That's his job, is to spoil the fun, no matter what. And yeah, for myself, because I have all these planets in Gemini, and Saturn has been going. He's been in Sagittarius,
Yes.
and he's been opposite all those planets in Gemini for me since 2017. So, you know, I'm always grateful for whatever comes, but I'm also like, thank you for moving on, Saturn. Thank you. You know, because it's a lot to have him going. He's going forward and back over. Literally, I have my Ascendant, Mercury, Venus, Sun, and Rahu all there, and he's just like for 3 years, just opposite all of it in the 7th house. So those aspects by transit are also big. And so, like with you, Alex, you also have a couple planets there in Cancer. So it's the 7th house, but then it's also those aspects to look at.
Right. Yeah. I'm looking forward to it though, I think, because, well, I don't think, I know that I'm looking forward to it because I really, I love Saturn. Like I really love the lessons that he brings and the way that he teaches and the way that he, you know, it's like everybody gets so serious when they talk about Saturn. He's kind of like just this serious guy, you know, like when he enters the room, everybody kind of like gets a little, okay, you know, and it's like, I think it's because he brings the deep lessons. Like he brings like the truth.
No joke. It's no
joke. You know,
joke.
it's no joke. And it's like, but for people who really want to show up for that and really want to, it's like he makes us face life. And it's like when we continue to surrender to his lessons and see that, like, it's like, because every planet is bringing us somehow to the ultimate goal. If we look at the ultimate goal as being a higher consciousness or a spiritualized existence or whatever, if that's how we want to see life, it's like the planets, all our teachers bringing us there, but they work together, you know. And it seems like the way that Saturn teaches us is like he creates obstacles. He makes our dreams, like he brings a realism to things where it's like, well, I know that's what you thought you wanted, but here's what life is delivering you. Or here's the struggle, you know, here's these loopholes you have to jump through. And are you going to become bitter and depressed and detached? Or are you going to kind of bow, you know, and surrender and say thank you and just trust this course that Saturn brings you on? And I think that's where Saturn returns bring so much maturity. They bring so much realization of kind of the ground level truth. And this is where, you know, I'm looking forward to it because I think I need it. I think I need a little, you know, when it comes to especially relationships and this kind of like little spank of truth, you know, that's like, no, you can't keep going like this. And so I'm gonna, it's like, all right, put the obstacles in my way, put the heaviness, like, let me learn how to surrender. Let me learn how to show up in service. And that's why I think also people who know how to serve are people who understand Saturn, because they understand compassion. They've been through struggle. And that's why they're also people who know how to get things done, because they know what it takes. And so I really love him for what he brings and the way that he teaches us how to see beyond the veil by creating like shocking, hard events. You know, that's why like death or illness, these things that Saturn brings, it's like everything stops and we have to become really present in this now. And that's why Saturn is this force of, oh God, it's no joke, you know, like the truth beyond anything else. And so I'm really looking forward to him and learning deeper how to surrender and have confidence in his lessons, because I know that he also brings great blessings to people who are willing to, you know, go through that.
Yeah. And the other thing from your point of view as well, it's always good to keep in mind is that, you know, everything, you know, the principles from natal astrology carry over into transit as well. And Saturn has the directional strength in the 7th house, his strongest over. And, you know, when you look at the calculations for Digbala, it doesn't have to be in the 7th house. It's literally the 7th. It's literally like the 6th, 7th, and 8th houses. That's where it's really the house before the angle, and then the house after. That section of the sky is where Saturn is the strongest. is the most prominent. Astronomically, it's the thing that's furthest away from the eastern horizon. It's the western horizon. Saturn has power in the west. He has the directional strength, the Digbala in the west. And because the sun rises in the east, that's like the sunrise, the beginning of life. It's like the dawn, like everything, taking form. And you want Saturn as far away from that as you can, because he's the end. He represents the end of life, not the beginning. So Mercury and Jupiter have that directional strength in the first, which is like your physical body, the first house, being curious, going out there, trying to live life, being hopeful, which is like Mercury and Jupiter have the directional strength in the first. And then Saturn's all the way on the seventh house, which is after all that experience, you want Saturn to be as far away from that nexus of experience, which is the first house. You want Saturn to be as far away from that as possible, because he sits back and just kind of watches it and goes, okay, not this, not this, not this. Ah, yeah, this. Focus on that. Concentrate on that. Because this is really a good way to understand Saturn. It's like he's like the master of time. You don't want him too close, and the verdict of time. Maybe that's the better way to put it. Because he takes a long time to go around. He takes 30 years to go around. So anytime he goes over one of your natal planets, the last time he went over that was 30 years ago, right? So he'll come around 30 years later. So 30 years ago, those of us who are old enough to have lived a life by then as well, he had gone over it already. Your first Saturn return, then the second Saturn return. But then he goes over all those other planets as well. So each one of those returns is Saturn is rendering a verdict about that thing. So it's not just the moon, we focus on Sati or a Saturn return, but every time Saturn goes over the natal sun, he only does that once every like 30 years. So you reevaluate your relationship with your power, etc. But he has that directional strength in the seventh house, because he's sitting there giving this stark, honest reflection. It's like, oh, you think you're this. Saturn sits there in the seventh house. He goes, here's how much you really love others, can accommodate others, know yourself, trades your integrity for approval. Here, you want to see what it really looks like? Here, watch it for a while. What do you think, Malini? I know Malini loves Saturn.
I love Saturn. I really love
You got
Saturn.
it in your first house, right?
Yeah.
Malini has exalted Saturn in her first house. So
I really started growing up when Saturn went over my moon. Which my moon is in Virgo in 12th house. And, growing up in India, I was always considered a mature child, but like real maturity comes from Saturn. Because he, like you said, makes you look at the limitations of life, and then makes you really grow up. And for me, when Saturn was going through Sagittarius, it was actually casting a 10th house aspect on my moon in the 12th in Virgo, and moon is my 10th house lord. I really had to get, first of all, in very tangible terms, had to get clear about money. I had no concept of money. I was very happy being on a stipend, putting things on credit card. When I get a job, I'll pay it off. And
so it was also opposite your second lord then too.
It was opposite my second lord. Second, 11th, and 12th lord, 9th and 12th lord.
Right.
So really getting clear about what money means. How do I handle it? How it is a resource? What does it represent in my life? And I can't just be so checked out about money, which a lot of us are. The world is in what, $30 trillion in debt. It's just crazy. So understanding the importance of money and how to handle it and manage it well. And Saturn did give me the obstacles, because I would have, like, somebody offered me to be a CEO of a company for $60,000 a year. And I was like, how am I going to pull that off? It's just like crazy stuff, like things that you can't imagine and are completely not acceptable. Saturn will throw it in your face and be like, okay, let me see how you're going to deal with it.
Because the deeper thing, and especially with the second lord and those things that you're talking about, this is all just shown by Saturn's aspect by transit, aspecting natal rulers.
Yes.
Yeah. And because I know Malini's chart and I know she has Mars in the 9th house, and she's Libra, so Mars is the second lord. That's how I knew he was doing the second lord as well when she started saying money. But that's just that's just Saturn aspecting the second lord, Mars in transit aspecting the second lord in the natal chart. But the second house, again, we look at the money part, but money is really about values.
Mm-hmm.
And so Saturn was giving an opportunity for you to get this money, but it really made you question your values and say, do I really want to do this? Do I want to be CEO of a company? Even though I'm going to get the money, is it congruent with my values? Is it worth it? Worth it is different than do I want it or can I earn it? And again, this is always the big crisis people get in with their with their work, that I always have to kind of unravel for them. When someone just is talking about work, like where can I make the most money? I always know it's going to lead to that at some point. Like you have to make sure that what you're doing and the money, the value you're extracting is congruent with your values. Otherwise, at some point, you're not going to want it. It's not going to feel worth it.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, the money was not worth it. The job was not worth it. It was just a title. And the title was not worth it. Since then, I've been really questioning my value system. And I've been put in situations, especially with work, wherein I have to question what I'm going to stand for. And, you know, of course, I'm on a visa, so I cannot even shake the system too much. I'm bound by that system, and I have to play the system just enough so that I can have my own integrity. I can be an authentic individual, but not break the system so I don't lose my job or the visa and have to go back home. And how do you maintain that delicate balance? And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's all that pressure of like evaluating myself as what work I'm doing in the world. All that came up when Saturn was going through Sagittarius.
So the thing the thing also that's going on there is it was aspected those planets. They were in your 9th house.
Yes.
And the moon in the 12th house.
Yes.
These are 2 houses of foreign, either foreign travel or 9th house for, often you'll see people travel to foreign places for money, like with the 9th house and also 12th house.
Yeah.
But they're both foreign countries and foreign interests. What do you think Saturn going through the 4th house is going to be for that? Alix and Malini, what do you think? Now that Saturn's going through her 4th house, what do you think?
It's all bringing into question where I'm going to live.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Do you think it's going to be, what do you think it's going to do? Make it more uncertain or more stable? What do you think, Alix?
I would say it's going to make it more stable.
What do you think, Malini?
I think the same.
Yeah, I have a feeling, I think what the previous trial, maybe, again, because Saturn was also going through your 3rd house, which is like jumping, like interest, like, oh, maybe this thing, maybe that thing. Do I want, like, kind of getting all that 3rd house and aspecting those other things that had to do with money and residence.
Yes.
And you had to be kind of flexible and creative and crafty. Again, there's a lot of 3rd house energy there to kind of work through that. But Saturn going through the 4th house, and it's again, you always have to remember the dignity there. It's going through Capricorn. For you, it's such a powerful planet. It's also the 5th lord by transit going through the 4th. And it's going to settle that a lot more. I think it's going to settle that a lot more where you'll get something, a sponsorship or something that's much more congruent with your values and something that's more long-term and you know, where you can feel and where you can settle into a home, into this as a home. You think so?
Yes, yes. I most definitely think so. I also have Jupiter there, so
Okay.
um, but yeah, I most definitely think so. There'll be some resolution to this, wherein I'll finally settle and lay down roots and be able to do really hard, solid work in building a home. Whether it's a tribe, it's a community, uh, or just a home. I think that's going to become solid right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also the one thing that I really want to uh, second Alix on is I'm grateful for all the struggles, like all the pains and the struggles, and just like a lot of times it was just like being in surrender. I don't know what's going to happen, but you take care of me, and like learning to surrender. And you know, with Saturn, especially in my first house, I love to control stuff, right? I want to know, I want to be able to control stuff. And then it's a constant struggle between wanting to know and then letting go. And being grateful for that, really grateful for all the pains and all the people that have come into my life, and every single obstacle that was put in my way. I know who I am. I know what I'm willing to stand for. I know how strong I am, because Saturn shows you your strengths. It shows you what you're willing to endure in the long run for things what you're going to stand for, and really bring that into focus. And it will not just give you the answer. It will make you go through experiences so that answer is built in deep within your psyche and your soul.
What do you think, Alix?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's why it's an internalized process. There's an internal reorganization that Saturn, by Saturn creating these external issues, you know, and really deep challenges. It's reorganizing us. We have to change the way that we view things on an internal level in order to deal with what Saturn is presenting us. We have to be able to find a way to be okay within the process. So that's why it's Saturn's lesson. He's a slow teacher. Maturity, self-contemplation, an ability to detach from what's happening outside of you. It happens slowly. It's like Saturn is carving you into someone who's more deeply able to handle these things from an internal level. So it's really that kind of process that Saturn, that's why he's a slow teacher, but the lessons that we learn from him only can happen slowly, because they're so profound.
Yeah, he just says, I mean, it's profound. He just says, look, you're going to die. You're going to die. Die. Do you get it? Die. That's what he says, right?
Yeah.
That's what he says.
And that's the same kind of process if we look at the way of aging. You know, it's like we know from the moment that we're born that we're going to die, but it's a slow process of going through youth, going through everything just to get to, it's like we already know that that's the deepest truth, but he's a slow teacher in the process of how it all unfolds.
Yeah, that's why I just kind of went, like that's kind of like, we know it, but we don't know it.
Right.
We do not know it. We believe it, or here's the way I describe it. We've heard of it. We're like, oh yeah, I've heard of that. Oh yeah, I'm going to die. Oh yeah, it rings a bell. Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah, I know that. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. But don't say it. Don't say anything about, oh my God, that's so sad. Nobody wants to hear it.
Yeah.
And it's the most real thing. It's the only thing you actually know that's going to happen.
Yeah.
The only thing. Everything else you kind of believe. I don't even care how good it is. It's a belief. But one thing that is absolutely certain is that. And yet we're like, no, don't make me think about that. Yeah, so that's really the lesson. It gets very simple. You know, I have a desire to just want to make it simple. That's what he's teaching. We make it so complicated. We're like, oh, it's so, no, it's like, he actually has a very simple lesson. You are going to die. You're not going to survive. Get it through your head and deal with it. You can't control. You're not in control of this.
Mm-hmm.
You're at the mercy of this. You should be grateful you're even alive to be able to take breath and hopefully evolve and know the self.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, you have no idea what's going on. And if you think you do, just watch. So he kind of brings the pressure that reveals the immaturity, because that's the whole thing of what it is. That's what it is to be immature. Yeah. This is what we're immature about, you know. I don't remember where I heard it, but there's really only one fear, and it's the fear of death. There's only one fear.
Yes.
It's not like we have all these fears. No, we don't. There's one fear. Because if you were going to live forever and you knew it, you would have no fear. What would you be afraid of? Mm-hmm. You would jump off the building. You would do it. Who cares? I'm not going to die anyway. There would be no fear. So every fear that is just one fear.
Yeah.
Is death. Just like there's only one emotion. What do you think it is? There's really only one feeling. They all come from the same source. What do you think that is? One feeling. There's only one feeling.
Answer doesn't know.
There's a lot of emotions, but there's only one feeling.
Love?
I
Yes.
was going to guess that.
No, but
love,
love is the source of all the emotion. There's really only one feeling. There's millions of emotions about it. Like all this, like what we call love, you know, our emotional love is just the opposite of hate. That's not really love. All of those emotions that get generated really come from one feeling. There's really only one feeling. And that feeling is love. Now, when it gets twisted through our ego into hate and all this other stuff, that's emotion. That's not a feeling. Feeling that gets generated, the source of all feeling is love. Mm-hmm. And the source of all neuroses and stress is fear. And there's really only one fear. It's a fear of death. There's really only a couple things that are going. That's why they say love or fear, which is kind of like the moon or Saturn. Pure love or fear. Like this is really the choice in almost everything we do. Are we going to follow that love, which then leads to like an emotion of bliss and of that thing, or are we going to follow that protection and fear, which then leads to all kinds of other things? But so Saturn really, in some ways, is trying to make it really simple. Particularly when he's in Capricorn, I think even more so than Aquarius, because Capricorn is like the feeling of it. Mm-hmm. Makes it really simple. Like, you know, there's really nothing to do about it. So just sit there and feel it. Just sit there and just kind of slow everything down and stop all the immaturity. Just get real about this. It's what's going on, and in doing that, you find the deathless, because there really is no death either, because it's just the body. The body changes because we're attached to the body. There's fear of losing the body, but you're going to lose the body. In fact, you don't even have the body. The body belongs to the earth. It belongs to nature. It's not even yours. It belongs to the earth. So it's like he's trying to squash and destroy all of the illusion and the immaturity that we have about all the things we think we know on that level. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You think so?
Yes. And you can see this as people have different Saturn returns, right? Most people lose somebody in their first Saturn return, or either a parent or somebody. And
many times the first Saturn return, actually, let me just say this really quick. I was saying this before we started. Often, because I'm about to go through my second Saturn return.
Yay, Sam.
I know, right? Getting near 60. Can you believe that? Unbelievable. But actually the first Saturn return is, which happens around 30, is kind of like the first like awareness of like, okay, what do I want to be when I grow up? Because you go through your 20s and then you get around 30, 28 to 30, and you're like, okay, now I want to grow up and have kids and job and responsibility, and the first Saturn return brings the pressure of growing up, literally, of coming out of your 20s into the 30s and the world of responsibilities. The second Saturn return is actually when you might start losing parents if they're still alive, and you start realizing that you have a lot more yesterdays than tomorrows. And it starts to, you feel like you've already lived now 30 years. That 30-year thing you've already did, you probably had kids and got wound up in the world of job and responsibility. And now you start saying, okay, I'm getting close to 60, and who knows if this is my last Saturn return or not. If I get another one, I'll be 90. So what's going to be for the last part of my life? And so the second Saturn return, things get more serious about legacy and stuff like that.
Yes, yes. Yeah, so Saturn teaches you about death first through the death of family members or other people, where it brings in the pressure, like you said, of time and death. And you come to a reckoning with your own death when you start losing people that are really close to you. And it's also Saturn's way of detaching us or taking away things that we are so attached to. And most of us are very attached, more than possessions, we are very attached to the relationships in our life. So it's a way of creating solitude. Now you're alone. It just strips things away from you, whether it's relationships, whether it's possessions, and then you have to sit by yourself. It creates that solitude wherein now who you are you okay being alone? If there's nothing else in the world that's given to you, can you still survive? And then it brings into question your life on earth and then the life beyond. And we see it in a lot of Sadhgurus, like we talk about Amma all the time. And it's just like an embodiment of Saturn, wherein it's the pressure. All of us are feeling the pressure of time, but for them, they've transcended that, and everything is okay. Death is okay. Life is okay. Birth is okay. The cycles are just okay, and to be okay with everything and be still with everything. That's what Saturn brings.
Well, its name is Shani, which is from the same word as Shanti.
Yes.
And Malini, didn't you want to talk about Capricorn and some of the deities and nakshatras in Capricorn? Didn't you have a slide you wanted to share?
Yeah, can I share?
Yeah, you should be able to. Wait a minute, make co-host. Okay, now you should be able to share your screen. Alix, did you have anything to say about what Malini was just saying or what I was saying?
Well, yeah, I'm thinking about, as we're talking, how, Saturn's not necessarily the planet that's associated with joy, for instance, but I'm seeing actually, he really, by learning his lessons and usually having to go through the process of sorrow first, frustration first with kind of these outer world issues, we actually do find a deep peace, that Shanti, and almost peace. A joy. Yeah, because there's, okay, I have another day, okay, today is good. And it's like, it seems more even long lasting than like the joy that Venus would bring or something, because it's so ingrained from like a very deep level of like, okay, right now is all I have. Like, how am I going to show up? And there's just so much power, especially with Saturn moving into his own house, and just really seeing how much growth and sweetness it can bring if you look at it from that kind of aspect of the way that Saturn teaches us and inspires us.
I'll share this one thing too, that one of my first experiences, even with spirituality and all of that, was when Saturn was going over my moon the first time when I was 19 years old. And, you know, the moon is came a Druma. There's nothing on either side. So Saturn went over it. It was just like, just brought all this pressure. And what it does, it is literally kind of like death. And and what it does is it strips you bare and brings so much pressure where literally, like, the way I understand it or understood it or explain it or feel it, and again, it's very hard to bear this, but you don't trust yourself to do anything. I mean, it will stop you to the point to where you're saying it can strip you down to the point, and it should at some point. Life needs to strip us down to the point to where we say, I don't know anything. I don't trust anything I'm doing, so I'm just going to sit here and breathe and be present. Because every idea I have, every thought I have, every impulse I have to try to do something is wrong. I'm totally, totally ignorant and have no idea what I am, who I am, or what's going on. And if we ever can authentically get to that point, that's where everything is revealed. And because we don't, our ego thinks it has some idea, some clue, something to do, something else that's, oh, this will work, that'll work. Nothing's going to work. And it's all the work to try to trick death somehow. No, it ain't going to get me. It just doesn't work. The ego always finds a way to have some other strategy. And at some point, Saturn is trying to just say, none of it's going to work. You have no idea what you're doing. Just sit there and be totally still. And when I was really young, when I first started meditating, that's really what it was for me. And it wasn't suicidal or anything. It can be very depressing if someone doesn't have some connection, some ability to like see what's next. You know, if you're totally identified with this body, it's not an easy thing to bear. But if you're not that attached to the body anyway, which I really wasn't, it was so liberating. I was like, oh, it's just like, it is the most liberating, exhilarating. It is liberation. And it's total stillness, silence, peace, surrender, because you are literally about as present as you could be, because you have no motivation to think that you have any clue about what to do to try to help yourself.
Right.
And the ego is the thing that thinks, oh no, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do this. And we always come up with something else, or help me do this. And eventually Saturn, life is literally trying to say, no, sit there and be quiet. That's what all spiritual teachings are really about. All of them, all the yoga, all the asana, all the complicated meditations are really so at some point you'll just give up. That's what surrender is. It's literally, that's what surrender is. You surrender, like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. And Saturn, that's what it's trying to do. And I'm saying this too, because when everybody starts jumping out of their skin about all this pressure that comes, and it does, it can deliver massive pressure to everything that you think you are and you want. And if that's all it's trying to do, is to say, you do not know what you're doing and who you are. So just surrender, give it up. Even just try it. Just try it for like 5 minutes, please. Try for 5 minutes to think you don't have a clue. Just try it. Sorry, I'm going off a little bit. I think it's funny myself, but you know, I have a pretty
true, and it's actually quite refreshing when you really settle into it. But the mind, you know, everything else wants to fight it. But
yeah,
it sounds peaceful at the end of it all.
I totally resonate with everything you said, Sam, because I can't articulate it the way you did, but that's what was going on when Saturn went over my moon. I lost my dad. I lost everything was just stripped away, bare minimum. Didn't know where I could get my next meal from. It just strips you away that way. And
when it goes over the moon, because that's all of our attachments.
Yes.
Yeah, and because at that point I didn't really have a lot of attachments to my family and stuff. I didn't really care, frankly. I had really detached from a lot of them at that point because there was so much, you know, I don't know, just abuse and stuff. I really was just, it was actually very liberating after all of that. I was very detached already from just very kind of disassociated and unembodied and just, so that I was like, okay, good, take all that. Ugh, I don't like it anyway. Like I didn't feel a lot of attachment to any of that anyway. And actually what it did is after that, it reattached me. It's like after that happened, I became very reconnected with family and all that stuff. Because I had really disassociated from all that. Like, I don't know who you crazy people are, but I don't want anything to do with you. So when Saturn did that, I was like, great, take it all away. But then there was great compassion and great sensitivity and not just forgiveness, but just reverence and like, okay, yeah, these are just people. They did the best they could. So what? It was like, whatever. Kind of just instantly, all of the drama, the attachment, the this or that just kind of was like, ugh, why would I think all that? Who cares? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So did you want to share something,
Yeah.
Malini? Do you want to share your screen?
Oh,
good.
Can you?
Yeah, we see it.
See it? Okay. I just put together some stories of the nakshatras in Capricorn that Saturn will go over, and maybe we all can chip in and see how Saturn is going to play out. The first nakshatra that Saturn is already in is Uttara Ashada, and the deity is Vishwadevas. And there are different descriptions about who Vishwadevas are. If you look at the Vedic texts, especially the Rig Veda, they call all Vedic gods as Vishwadevas, and that includes the 33. They categorize them in 33 different kinds of forces, which includes 8 Vasus, 11 Rudras, 12 Adityas, Brahaspati, Prajapati, and I've put Daksha there because that's the story we'll be talking about. In Vishnu Purana, Vishwadevas are born out of the god Dharma and Vishwa. She's a daughter of Daksha, and they are they represent certain abstract qualities of life on earth. Also, what is important to remember with Uttara Ashada is like one of the symbols is the elephant's tusk. So the symbology of Ganesha is very important. This nakshatra is called Later Victory 1, which literally means that when you put in efforts, even though in the beginning you may not get the desired results, but through endurance and efforts in the long run, you will finally get what you were working towards. The story that I have here that I pulled up is of Daksha. Daksha is Brahma's son, and a lot of people in the popular Eastern culture know Daksha as the father of Sati. Sati was the first wife of Shiva. So Brahma ordered Daksha to procreate, and Brahma is the creator of the world. He created his son Daksha, and he was like, okay, go populate the universe. And so Daksha mentally produces 10,000 sons. And Narada, who's a Muni, a sage, actually convinces these 10,000 sons to renounce the world. So Daksha goes again and creates 10,000 sons again from his mind. And the same thing happens. These sons become celibate, they follow Narada. And then Daksha places a curse on Narada, wherein he cannot have a stable residence and he's constantly moving throughout the universe. And after that, Daksha procreates physically. And he has about 60 daughters. One of them is Sati. Several of them are married to sage Kashyapa. but from the story, what we can see is Daksha had to, in order to fulfill the task or his father's wish, he had to keep trying. It's like try till you succeed kind of thing. He had to keep trying in different ways till he finally could accomplish what his purpose was. Also in Bhagavad Gita, there is a story of Arjuna, which is also relevant here. And if you read Bhagavad Gita and you know about the Kurukshetra war, it was happening somewhere around these nakshatras. And there are some hints given because in the Mahabharata war there are hints of Bhishma dying. Bhishma is one of the warriors, but he had the boon to choose his time of death, and he waits till Uttarayana, which is winter solstice. Northern course, which is winter solstice. And it used to happen during that time around in Uttarashada or Shravana Nakshatra. That's when the sun would change its course. Also, there is a mention of Abhijeet Nakshatra, which is the last pada of Uttarashada and the first 1/5 portion of Shravana, and how anything you did in that nakshatra would fruition. And the Kauravas were planning some strategy to happen to coincide with when the moon was in that nakshatra, and then Shiva uses his powers to make that star disappear in the sky, so nobody could use that nakshatra to do anything evil. So there are hints about that whole war happening around this section of the sky.
Can I ask, that's great. Where is this is very interesting because Brahma and Daksha and very similar to the Prajapati and as well, like similar, huh?
Yeah. So I've put Prajapati here. So Prajapati are a group of deities. It's not just one deity, and one of the Prajapatis was Daksha. So
yeah, okay, that's okay, yeah.
So it's very confusing the way.
There's so much crossover in the Purana. Is this from the Bhagavatam?
So this the second stanza right here. This is from Vishnu Purana, where
I meant the story actually. Yeah, I meant the story.
The story is from the Bhagavatam. Correct.
For Bhagavatam, yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, that's all I was wondering.
Yeah.
I haven't heard this story before.
Yeah.
It's interesting. No, it's yeah. And the Vishwadevas are really interesting. And even things from the Mahabharata I've seen where the Vishwadevas are related to Bhima and some of the other warriors, and also like you have up here from the Vishnu Purana, you have the Vasu, the Satya, Kratu, Kama. This is the other ones I've seen. Kala, Kama, Karma. These are the ones that I usually talk about as well. These 10 sons of Dharma and Vishwa.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the most.
So that's the difference between the Vedic way of referring to the Vishwadevas and the Puranic.
And the Puranic, yeah.
So the Puranic way of, this is how I understand it, the Puranic way of addressing the Vishwadevas are all these abstract qualities that we need to live like a higher dharmic life on this planet.
Yeah.
Including, our relationship to ancestors, the Kurus, and our willpower, lust and desire, and time. All that are really abstract qualities that we want to live, that are required to live a more dharmic life on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
The other story that is associated with this is the one of Arjuna gaining his knowledge. And I know, Sam, you have talked about this before. So the Pandavas again, this is related to Uttarashada, the one that was victorious in the end. And the Pandavas went through the struggle with their brothers, who were 100 Kauravas, throughout their lifetime. They were sent to the forest in exile at least 3 times. And then finally they come on this battlefield, and Arjuna is in a dilemma to kill his own brothers. And Arjuna has Krishna as his Sarthi, his charioteer. And Krishna then imparts the knowledge of the universe into Arjuna, as the Bhagavad Gita we know. So that happens in this whole nakshatra. And then Arjuna, with this knowledge of the divine self, is able to carry out his karma in order to establish dharma. So, and so the whole later victorious one is also reflected in the story of the Pandavas and Arjuna, and then how they gained.
The other thing I'll say, yeah, about this nakshatra is very important, is it's the one between Sagittarius and Capricorn. So this is those ones that exist between the two are, again, especially because you always have to remember that this is sidereal. Of course, Indian astrology is absolutely sidereal zodiac. Everything is nailed to that. And this last pada of Sagittarius and the first 10 degrees of Capricorn are shown by this nakshatra. So it literally takes the inspiration, the teachings, the purpose, that higher longing to merge with God through a higher philosophy of Sagittarius, and brings it into the effort, the tangible structure, the commitment, the sadhana of Capricorn. So it's literally where we pull that philosophy out of the sky and start applying it in our life. This nakshatra is the one that does that. And you can see how the first 2 nakshatras in Sagittarius, Mula, is about uprooting and pulling out after Scorpio, and then planting seeds. And then Appas, who is the deity of Purvashada, the first ashada is about watering those seeds, starting to create and nurture that new inspiration and that new sort of philosophy. And then Uttarashada, the later victory, takes that principle of planting seeds and nurturing those seeds, and then saying, okay, now that you've planted and nurtured seeds, now you need to take all this stuff and concentrate your energy on it if you want that later victory, which of course the later victory is victory like in battle, and to produce children and all this stuff like we see with this story, so that it produces a form.
Yes.
Alix, you have anything to add?
No,
Okay.
I'm just happy to hear the story.
Yes.
What's the next one? Shravana.
Shravana. And so the deity for Shravana is Vishnu. Also, it's said that Saraswati was born in this nakshatra. And the thing with this, with Shravana is, it says hearing. The message is hearing. You need to listen. And the story that is very famous that's associated with this nakshatra, there are 2 stories that I pulled up actually. One is of King Bali, and how he conquered the 3 worlds. I said earth, atmosphere, and heaven. Some say earth, hell, heaven, and hell. But he conquered these 3 worlds, and all the gods and the demigods were not pleased. So they go to Vishnu, of course. And Vishnu incarnates as Vamana. It's also important to remember that in all the Vishnu incarnations, this is the first human form that he takes.
It's Vamana.
It's Vamana is the first human form he takes.
Yeah, and I think you're interpretation of the three worlds, earth, atmosphere, and heaven, is the Vedic one. They don't have hell in that sense. I don't think.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So that's why
I think hell is earth, by the way. I mean, it's, you come down here, this is it.
Yeah.
We're already there. Nowhere to go but up.
Yeah.
No need to make it deeper and more fiery.
Yeah. So Vishnu incarnates as Vamana. Vamana literally means the short one or the short drop. As a Brahmin, he comes as a Brahmin while Bali is doing a yagya. He's doing a really big yagya to get some siddhis. And the rule of the yagya is, if a Brahmin comes and asks you anything during the yagya, you give it to the Brahmin. Otherwise, the yagya will not be successful, will not come to fruition. Bali's guru was Shukracharya, Venus. So when Vishnu appears as Vamana to Bali and says, I have just a small request from you, Venus or Shukracharya was like, okay, I know that he's up to something. Bali, of course, agreed. Whatever you ask, I'll give it to you. And he's trying, the first ritual of that whole giving the Brahmin whatever they ask is washing the Brahmin's feet. So Shukracharya actually, takes a form of a really miniature dwarf and then goes into, puts himself in the pot and clogs the spout of the pot so that the water doesn't come out. And Vishnu takes a blade of grass and pokes the pot, and in the process pokes Shukracharya's eye, and that's why Venus is blind by one eye, is what they say. And the water comes out. Bali washes Vishnu's feet, Vamana's feet, and then Bali's like, what is it that you want? I'll fulfill it. And Vamana is like, I just want land that is worth 3 steps of mine. And because he's a dwarf, Bali's like, sure, choose any land you want. And it's his arrogance. And as soon as he says that, Vishnu becomes really huge, giant. And with his one step, he conquers the earth and the atmosphere. With his second step, he conquers the heaven. And then Vishnu is like, where do I put my third step? And Bali is so humbled seeing Vishnu's roop, his incarnation, that he takes his crown off and he's like, put the third step on my head. And and Vishnu does that. And then Vishnu is so pleased by his surrender and humility that he makes Bali the protector of the outer heliosphere of this solar system. So apparently Bali is protecting us from things.
I didn't know that part.
So
do you know what Vishnu avatar is related to Vamana?
What Vamana is the avatar.
Yeah, but it's related to the planets. Each planet is connected to a Vishnu avatar. Yeah, which planet is Vamana, Vishnu avatar?
No.
Jupiter.
Okay.
Yeah, because he gets big.
He gets big. Okay.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite stories, the way the Vishnu avatars come and save creation. This one is good. He's a little dwarf. Sure, I'll give you 3 steps. And then he draws Janek and conquers the universe with his 3 steps.
3 steps, yeah. And it said that by doing so, he Vamana or Vishnu actually links all the 3 worlds together.
Right.
And which also, that's why hearing is very important, because the way you link yourself to the world and to others is being in a state of receiving or listening. You have to listen very intently. The other story that happens in this nakshatra, and it's a story which is very relevant because Mahashivratri generally falls in this nakshatra, somewhere around in this nakshatra. It's the churning of the Milky Ocean, the cosmic ocean, and how both, it's such a huge task. It's nobody has done it. They're churning this Milky Ocean. The devas and the asuras, the gods and the demons, all come together because everybody's force is required together for them to work together in order to get the elixir, the amrita, from the Milky Ocean. And a lot of us know this story. When they're churning the ocean, the first thing that comes out is poison, and Shiva is called, and Shiva comes and takes that poison and drinks it. And Parvati is just, his wife, his consort, is just so worried that the poison will kill him. It's a deadly poison. Nobody wants to take it. That she goes and holds his throat, and the poison collects in his throat, and he becomes the blue throat one. Nilakantha. Nila means blue and Kantha means throat. So that's the other story that's associated with this nakshatra. But it symbolizes people coming together, being receptive to each other, hearing, literally listening in order to work with each other and accommodate each other.
This nakshatra is the only one that's totally in Capricorn. So Uttarashada is part of Sagittarius and Tanishta is part of Aquarius, but this is the one that's fully in Capricorn.
Yes.
Yeah. So this one to me also is really the part of Capricorn that is about silence, and silence is really that's the most coveted. I think it's the most valuable experience on earth, is not external silence, internal silence, because we're never silent. Our mind is always chattering, and people can't experience silence in their mind, can't feel the silence in their being, then they have no idea what surrender is, what the self is, what liberation is, whatever. It's just some chattering going on in their head all the time. But silence is the currency of liberation. Like, you need to be silent. And Capricorn is Saturn is the planet, and Capricorn is really the thing that brings the silence. And if people can abide in silence, then they have peace.
Yeah.
And if you can't abide in silence, you have no peace. None. If silence means, oh my God, I'm jumping out of my skin, or like we can't be alone. Again, these are the things that Saturn brings, is the ability to be alone. Again, just think of how addicted we are to other people. We always got to have somebody around us, or have somebody define us or approve of us, or reflect, and can't be alone. So a lot of that virtue of solitude, silence, stillness, a lot of this nakshatra is about that, because hearing and listening is just the other side of silence, because sound disappears in silence. It rises from silence and falls in silence. But silence is the substratum of sound. Just like we're saying, love is the source of all emotion and all that. Silence is the source of sound. Because a sound has a beginning and an end, it has an origin. And its origin is silence.
Yeah.
So hearing is one of the most sacred, and listening is one of the most sacred spiritual practices going. I talked about it in my recent update about Saturn. That's why they hit like the monks, especially like Tibetan meditations and stuff, where they hit the bowls or a gong. And what they're doing is they hit the gong and they're listening. And the meditation with gongs and stuff is to sit there and have it resonate until the sound disappears. You follow the sound deep inside. And while you're going into the sound, as it enters you, because sound comes into your ears and vibrates your being, and then it eventually disappears, but it disappears in silence. And if you're one with it, you disappear in silence. Mm-hmm. Your mind disappears in the silence. But then you're reborn in the silence. So, any comments on that? Alex, you have anything to say?
No, just kind of
Okay.
still listening.
That's beautiful, Sam. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
this nakshatra is really that, it's that part of Capricorn, or that's what I think of when I think of this nakshatra.
Yeah.
A lot of musicians and whatnot have Shravana and also Danishta. Both of them have a lot of this connection to music, vibration. Danishta is a drum, and so.
Yeah, you have Saraswati born in this nakshatra, who's the goddess of all knowledge, wisdom, music, literature, and that it all comes when you're completely silent.
Yeah. All this arises out of this contemplation. I mean, that's the greatness of Capricorn. That sign has so much depth to it. You know, and again, that's that inner, that emotional stillness and peace, and where we gather and we really, where we can really surrender and disappear into that depth,
Yeah. Yeah. The next one is Dhanishta, and the deity is 8 Vasus. The symbol is the drum. And whenever I think of the drum, I think of Shiva. It's just like the rhythm that just, even in silence, there is a rhythm. There's just a rhythm to everything.
Yeah, this is a real Shiva nakshatra.
Yeah.
Other than Ardra, this is one of the main ones.
Yeah. And the deity is the 8 Vasus. And the 8 Vasus are the demigods. They are related to the elements on this plane. And there's a story behind it. And it also links to Mahabharata because, like I said, when the war was happening and all that was happening, was unfolding, it was, I think my interpretation is it happened around these nakshatras. So one of the Vasus, Prabhasa, his wife was enchanted by this cow that sage Vashishta had, and she urges her husband Prabhasa to go and get that cow for her. And Prabhasa is reluctant, but then finally agrees, and he gets the other 7 brothers to help him steal this cow from Vashishta. So they don't even ask his permission. They actually steal the cow. I don't know why. They steal the cow from Vashishta. Vashishta figures this out and curses the 8 Vasus to be born as mortals on this planet and suffer like mortals. So, of course, the 8 brothers go and ask forgiveness. Vashishta agrees that, once the curse is given, it cannot be taken back, but he says it can be modified, and their turmoil on this planet will be reduced, except for Prabhasa, because he committed a crime because of his lust for a woman, for his wife. So he has to live his life on this planet, and he will have no joy of wife, yet will have all the struggles of a household, and he'll be killed by a woman. That was his curse. So the 8 Vasus go to Ganga.
So this was the original like marriage, right? You won't have any fun with the woman, just all the problems, and she'll kill you. So this was the original. Here's where all that started, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so the Vasus,
and it continues today. We are all, we
have inherited that.
Yeah.
So they go to Ganga, and Ganga decides to help them. Ganga marries King Shantanu, and she tells him that he cannot question any of her actions. The day he questions her, she would leave him forever. And so Ganga becomes pregnant. She gives birth to 7 kids, and then every time the child is born, she goes and drowns the child in the river. And she does that for 7 of her sons. When the 8th one is born, Shantanu cannot, he's agonizing by the death of his kids, but he cannot ask any questions. So when the 8th one is born, he does ask the question to Ganga, and the 8th child is Prabhasa, who is born as Bhishma. And because Shantanu stops her from drowning the child, she leaves Shantanu and goes, but Bhishma is there. He grows up to be responsible for the whole kingdom. He lets his father remarry a fisherwoman, Satyavati, from whom the entire clan of Pandavas and Kauravas come.
Oh, wow.
And but he's celibate. He takes a vow that he will never marry, and he suffers through, because he has high integrity, but he sees all the wrongdoings, and he suffers internally. He suffers throughout his life due to the actions of all the brothers involved. Bhishma.
Right.
And in the end, he's forced to fight the war from the side that he obviously believes has done wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And
the Kauravas.
And
right.
He dies in the end. He's
right.
killed by a woman, and he's killed by this woman called Amba, who he had abducted to marry one of his father's kids. And the whole thing leads to her being abandoned by her lover, and also by the person for whom she was kidnapped. And she's reborn as a man, and then she's reborn as a woman, and then she takes the form of a man to fight the war. But Bhishma knows that she's a woman, and he refuses to fight her, and she finally kills him. So that's the whole story of this nakshatra, and the struggles of the 8 Vasus throughout Mahabharata as being
it's a very twisted story.
Very twisted story.
And the Mahabharata is very it's like that. It's so dense.
It is dense. It's very layered. Every story has several lessons in them.
And there's so much inner conflict, and so everybody is in a situation that's like insoluble, like you can't solve it. Everybody's is a villain and a hero at the same time.
Yes.
So how do you see that with this nakshatra, and with the 8 Vasus? Because I know how I see this. What do you think?
So I see the 8 Vasus as being necessary to keep this world of karma going. And what happens is, due to one's action, there is this whole karmic chain that is created. Even when Prabhasa is born as Bhishma, as Devrata or Bhishma on this planet, his vow for celibacy creates this whole complicated scenario, because had he had married and had kids, the entire kingdom would have been extremely straightened out. There would have been no fights regarding progeny or who inherits the throne and all that stuff. So their role on this planet to keep the cycles of karma going, so souls can come, experience karma, and move on. And it's like the drum, the rhythm. They keep the rhythm going constantly. It's like the tempo that keeps going, and then we are.
Yeah, and this nakshatra has that tension, and it's like this creative tension of this world of, it's very much the symbol that I look at too. It's not just the mridangam, the drum, but also Shiva as the Nataraj form.
Yes.
Not as the Rudra form, which is Ardra, that very fierce Rudra form, but as the Nataraja, who is playing the Damaru and it's not a mridanga, but it's the drum of creation. And this whole existence is just this act, this dance of destruction, worlds coming in and out of existence, and all of this energy, this frantic energy that's just all this sort of collision of all this karma and all this, all of these stories intersecting. And how a lot of it's playing out in our mind too, because I think a lot of the Mahabharata is also just the Kurukshetra is like the battlefield of our consciousness as well, and all of the stuff, the sort of leelas we play out in our head.
Yes.
And the need to really, underneath it all, this nakshatra has a lot to do with values. I mean, even the name Dhan means value. A lot of it is like our values. So of course, this is one of the ones where, because it's said very rich, it's about money, that people are always like, oh, I heard Dhanishta people make a lot of money. Like they bring it down to money and all that stuff. But again, you can see even this story is a lot about the kingdoms and losing it and doing this. It's the least important part on the interpretive level, is that, getting rich or getting money or whatnot, because you could lose the kingdom. I mean, they had the kingdom and he lost it in a game of dice.
Yes.
So wealth is just like, what's really valuable is what came later, and the real value of what happens in Mahabharata isn't whether they have the kingdom or not. It's the connection to Krishna and God and seeing beyond the struggles of the world.
Yes.
Interesting you brought this whole story out there. I'm like, okay, she's going to go through the whole thing. I'm like, I usually get about halfway into the stories, and I'm like, and then this whole other thing happened where it was this and that and this and that. So anyway, it means you went through the whole thing. So good for you.
I'm sorry, but it's just.
Oh, no, it's good. No, I'm glad. I don't think I've heard the whole thing. I knew up to a part of it, and but you brought it, like, I didn't know Ganga and coming back and Shantanu and Devrata and Bhishma. I didn't know it turned into that much. I knew the certain parts of it, but then I get like, okay, what's the punchline? I get kind of impatient.
Yeah, the punchline is like one single action can create such a big karmic ripple.
Yeah, and that's the part that I knew. I didn't even focus on his celibacy as what did that, but yeah, now that you said it, like, yeah, that's actually one of the things that disrupted the lineage.
Yes.
So, Alex, you have anything to share about Dhanishta or the story or anything?
Well, just as I'm listening, I'm kind of understanding thinking about, bringing it back, like Saturn's transit through these different through these nakshatras, and also how he just in general sort of, I mean, they have their own planetary rulership, but they're all kind of underneath this greater guise of Saturn and Capricorn, and just sort of how he would have a role to play in all, the way that the action creates a certain ripple effect that we really have to be present. And then the stillness of Shravana, and really that we're listening, that we're paying attention, that everything happens first on the internal realm. Even that Shiva was able to take the poison, it's like he was still, he's Shiva, so he could deal with this kind of darker thing because he had so much patience within him and so much kind of, steadfastness being who he is. And so yeah, just seeing how kind of Saturn's transit through these nakshatras, it's so important to kind of know the story and also the punchline, so that we can understand the karmas that are being brought and delivered as Saturn, who is the bringer of karma, kind of moves through these nakshatras.
Yeah, I second that.
Yeah, and the Dhanishta as well. Yeah, that's a great point. And with Dhanishta as well, it's the consequences, because in Mahabharata, everything it's all these consequences that come out of the most random sort of things. Like, you wouldn't know that something that happened five generations ago now has created this, and it's so many entanglements. Right. But Saturn is about time and times and the magnification of time and how it ripples over generations. Like I said, even him going into into Capricorn now, he hasn't been there for 30 years. For us, that's almost half our life, so this, all of that karma plays out. What did you want to say, Malini?
I wanted to second that, because you can see Saturn through all these nakshatras. How through Uttarashada, it's the lesson is endurance, and keep working at it, keep chipping away. Through Shravana, it's how you become still and you receive just the silence of Saturn. And through Dhanishta, it's like being so aware of karmas that play out in time. And it doesn't happen randomly. You have to wait for that time cycle to come for that karma to play out. So you can see Saturn through all these three nakshatras. And really, the punchline or the stories of these nakshatra distill down the real nature of Saturn in Capricorn, and how it's the feminine, reflective quality that we just need to. And these stories exist as allegories, right? We need to find our own lessons in there, how we connect, and how our life stories connect with the lessons in these stories.
Yeah, and even how they move into each other, because Dhanishta Shravana to Dhanishta, you know, in the Rig Veda and in the Yajur Veda, Shravana was actually called Shravishta.
Yes.
And they actually work with each other, because Shravana is also a wealth nakshatra. Dhanishta is definitely a wealth nakshatra. Of course, Capricorn is notorious for wealth. I mean, it's like you can get all of that spiritual energy just bogged down in the stress and fear and worry, and all of that gathering and skill of Shravana just becomes a way to make a lot of money. And Dhanishta, make a lot of money. Uttarashada, you know, ambitious, I'm going to win, victory, make money. You know, so again, there's that worldly quality of it as well. But again, it's often like all the earth signs, the highest value, because earth signs have a lot to do with values, is not the money. It's not that tangible form that's a commodity or something that is, you know, that's related to something that's sort of commercial in nature. The highest value is something that's intangible and that's, you know, internal. And so yeah, great. Boy,
yes,
we've been talking a while, haven't we? Time flies.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make sure to have links. This has been great. It's been a great conversation, huh? Went fast. God, can't believe it.
Yes, thank you, Sam.
Yeah, I have a link. So you guys tell me your say your websites again and stuff, so people can contact you. How do people contact you, Malini?
They can contact me by either emailing me at info@astro-gps.com, or if you go to the website astro-gps.com, you'll find me.
So we'll have it under the video.
Yeah, I also have a Facebook page with the same name, and a YouTube channel with the same name.
Yeah, so we'll have it under the video. And how about you, Alex?
My website is alexandrarose.com, or Facebook. Alexandra Rose is a good way through Messenger to contact me as well.
Good. So we'll have that link under there as well. And great. Well, I'm glad we did this. I had a good time. It was great to check in, and we'll be in touch. Thanks again, guys.
Yes. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.